Everyone, good afternoon, and thank you all again for being here and being at the 2023 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. I'm Ed, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and it is my pleasure to introduce our Career Playbooks panel today. But before we kind of start the event, I want to first introduce Susie Whaley, PGA of America, past president, and I'd like to give her the stage to say a few words.
Hi, everybody. You good? You okay? You sure? You need to stand up, do a little exercise, anything? Welcome. The PGA of America sponsored this today. I'm super happy to be representing them. My career playbook was certainly all over the map, and I think you'll have great enjoyment of hearing how all of our careers actually came to be, what that playbook looked like, where they stand now. I'm here to tell you my career has not been linear, but after being president of the PGA of America, which is the largest sports association in the world, it is not the PGA Tour. It is an association of 28,000 members, but we own the Ryder Cup. We own the KitchenAid Senior PGA Championship, the PGA Championship, and the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. So we get confused often with the tour, but that is not us. But after that, you would think I would go back into the industry in a governance capacity of some sort instead of I'm running a TV company. So I'm here to tell you that at the end of the day, your careers will be linear, but I think you'll find great enjoyment from the panel that you get to hear from today. Certainly esteemed careers for each and every one of them, and I hope you find it helpful in your career journey. Thanks for having me.
So now I'd like to introduce our 5 panelists. So in order from your left to right, Sezen Aksoy, SVP of Global Data Strategy and Analytics at Axis. Allison Katz-Mayfield, SVP of Games Delivery Revenue, LA 28 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Nikhil Morar, Manager of Business Analytics and Strategy at the Los Angeles Lakers. Angela Ruggiero, Co-founder and CEO, Sports Innovation Lab. And Jason Sinaraja, SVP of Business Administration at the Buffalo Bills. So how this event is going to work is each panelist will have around 10 to 12 minutes to introduce themselves and talk about their career journey, kind of what they did before, how they got into sports, what they're currently doing in sports. And then after each panelist talks about their career journey, we're going to open it up for Q&A for around the last 30 minutes where any of you can ask any of the panelists any questions.
Is this on? Oh, perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. Just a heads up, I had a lingering cough and left my prior panel for about 10 minutes to cough. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But if it does, not you guys. It's just, unfortunately, I couldn't get over this. And it's not COVID, just to say it too. So I'm really happy to be here. And so I had a little bit of an unusual background that got me to where I am today. I am originally from Istanbul, so I came to US as an international student. Went to Duke. My undergrad majors were economics and Italian language, because I just wanted to do something different. Short notice, I went to Italian high school back in Istanbul, so I spoke the language already, so I kind of wanted to continue this, to study the literature and the language. I also minored in math. And I always loved the microeconomics part of economics. It's probably shameful to say that I still don't like the macroeconomics part and the finance, but I really like microeconomics. So with that, I was looking for jobs, and American Airlines had a revenue management team, then they were looking for a yield management analyst. So that's a lot about competition, pricing, yield, right? What's the best way to maximize a seat on a plane, and whether it's a Dallas to Chicago, where it's a business market, on a Monday morning, or Dallas to Omaha. That is not necessarily that has the same demand. And it's a very data-driven industry, airlines. They have a lot of data in their hands, and this is now 19 years ago. So already back then, they had a lot of systems to show what's the historical load factor, which is the sell-through of the flight. Last 5 years, what's the forecast, what's the expected misconnections or delays, right? Like kind of have to always plan for that. What's the potential no-show rate on a flight, and things like that. So that being in that role, and I don't know if any of you are international students, but certainly I needed a work visa, so I sort of had to go through the system. And luckily I landed somewhere that I really enjoyed. But it is something else. It's something that we all have to kind of take into account for when you are coming here as an international student. I've spent about 4.5 years at American Airlines. My role in the last 2 years were, so I've done yield management and pricing, and then I moved to the corporate sales world and sold airline deals to companies like NBA, Disney, basically corporate travel, right? They have a lot of discounts on the flights, but in return, airline is looking for market share. So really, a very quantitative role again, but in a very different. This time, I was speaking to the customers. As I was moving to Cleveland with the family, Cleveland Cavaliers was looking for someone with airline pricing and sales background. And I was like, that's the only two things I know how to do. If you were ever looking for something else, I don't have it, but I do know how to do sales, and I know how to do airline pricing. And I will say it was a very visionary move on their end. The industries are pretty similar in some ways, in kind of when you think of the dynamics of demand and supply. It's a fixed cost, right? Game has to be played, flight has to go. So how you kind of think of the optimal price for a seat, the optimal sell-through, what did in the past that same game or similar game did, although historical data is a little bit different than what you have in the airlines. There was always a Chicago-Dallas flight for the last 5 years, but very similar industries. So I was able to bring a lot of learnings from the airlines into sports. Certainly quite a lot of differences as well. You have another airline if you're looking to go to a certain market, but for the sports or live entertainment, it's not necessarily the case. So I've spent about 4.5 years at the Cavaliers, started their analytics team on the business side. The fact that I went to Duke made them think I really love basketball, so that was like very much like I skipped all the basketball-related questions and just jumped in and initially started with some pricing projects, but then basically we become like an internal consulting team to the company where there's a sponsorship analysis project, there is a event operations analysis type project. So I've kind of seen a lot of different projects during my time there. I did my MBA at Kellogg while I was at the Cavs. And then again with family move, we moved to Los Angeles. I worked for Legendary Entertainment, which is a movie production company. And my background there, or my role there, was to be part of the applied analytics team that looks at data to do greenlighting decisions and digital marketing. Greenlighting meaning, okay, well, we have this video game, Detective Pikachu, should we make a movie on this? Our team was in charge of looking at every data that we can find. Social media data, listening, is this game popular? Would people want to see a movie on this game? We would do a lot of surveys. And then really try to bring it all together and bring sort of a data-driven, unbiased approach to the greenlighting process. Certainly creative had their opinion, and whether the movie was made or not wasn't just based on our analysis, but it was one perspective at the table. And if we made the movie, then we would market it years later. And it was a good exercise to see, okay, what we said about this movie 3 years ago, now does it still resonate, or is it still the same audiences that it resonates with? But that experience gave me a lot of knowledge about data, especially when you don't have it, because the movie production company doesn't have any consumer data. They make the movie, studios release it, and then either the now streaming or AMC sells it. So you're 2 steps removed. So in that situation, what data do you have to start looking at and understand the awareness or the willingness to see this movie? And then digital marketing, the paid media on the platforms. Obviously, we tested a lot of creative. We would understand who is the audience that wants to go to this movie. And that over there was a lot of data. So after that role, I am now at the role that I'm at, which is at Access. We are a ticketing company for live entertainment. I oversee data strategy analytics team, as well as the consumer marketing and the MarTech strategy. It is a kind of a perfect combination of all the three roles I had. So I'm in charge of revenue management for our clients. I'm in charge of the performance marketing, email marketing, MarTech, and for Access as well as for the clients, where we can enable them to do personalization and other things. We have data science, analytics engineering, business intelligence on the data side. So for any of those that you may be interested in the role, definitely let me know. And also, back into the live entertainment, sort of my marketing knowledge from the movies is really, that's what I've been able to translate, which is, how do you think about the content? How do you look at your audience strategy, your creative strategy? And over in the movies, we've done release schedules or, where to not release a certain movie based on the initial awareness or initial feedback on the trailers. You can kind of translate that for music on kind of when to release. So we are part of AEG, which is a promoter business and the venue business. So with among the three companies, we can help them to make decisions on which artists to promote, when to release concerts, where to release concerts. That's not something we are doing today, but that's kind of where we can take our data and help them with. I have been in each role for 4.5 years, almost to the dot. It is going to be 4.5 years in 3 weeks. So I'm getting a little angsty, to be fully honest, because I'm a little bit of a pattern person. However, I really enjoy the role I am at right now, and the technology that is so innovative when it comes to marketing and data is just every day we're sort of looking at a different thing almost. So I am probably going to break my pattern and stay here a little bit longer, but that's my story. So any questions after everyone goes through their story, please let me know.
All right, so I am Allison Katz-Mayfield, SVP of Games Delivery Revenue at LA28. So I guess I'll start with college as well, which feels like a very long time ago at this point, but I went to Cornell for undergrad and studied economics and psychology with no real goal other than I thought they were interesting. Wasn't really thinking too much about career path then. And got to my senior year and decided to go into consulting. I was fortunate to get a job with a company called Analysis Group, where I was an analyst. It was not exactly the most creative place, but ultimately it's not management consulting, so it's not BCG or Bain. It was much more financial and litigation consulting. And ultimately, it really helped me hone my analytical skills. A lot of the work I did was analysis that went into expert reports for trial around securities fraud, antitrust, and it was a really interesting job. It built up a lot of really important skills for me. I wouldn't say that litigation consulting was my passion, and so I came to a really natural breaking point in that job, which was you couldn't get promoted beyond where I was without a higher degree because of the type of work we did. And so I started to think about what I wanted to do next. And my brother, who is 3 years older than I am, he was in business school at the time, and he would call me and be walking between golf and improv. And I was like, that sounds far better than whatever I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So I started looking into going to business school. And as part of that, I started to really think about what do I want to do with my career? What are the skills that I have? What's the type of work that interests me? And what are the industries that I care about? And I landed on sports. I've always I've always loved sports. I've played sports since I was younger. I'm from Boston, so a big Boston sports fan. And I thought, okay, that'd be really cool to do the type of work I like to do and do it in an industry that I'm passionate about. So I spent a lot of time writing a lot of essays about how I wanted to work in sports. So a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy by the time I actually got to business school. But also spending a lot of time doing informational interviews with people in the sports industry because I didn't really know what types of roles were out there. And while I think my background is probably a bit more common now in the sports industry, it was not as common back then. I think sports was really just starting to lean in, especially on the business side, to a more analytical and business background. And so I actually went to Sloan. Part of the reason I chose to go to Sloan was one, because I got in, so that was a big barrier. But two, because I knew that sports was not going to recruit in a traditional way. It wasn't going to be like consulting or tech. And I knew that I was going to need to be somewhere where I could really build a network and build relationships. And I thought that Sloan would provide me the best opportunity to do that. So really early on, actually even before I started at Sloan, over that summer, I got involved with the EMS club, the Entertainment, Media, and Sports Club at Sloan, and helped them start to plan their like fall career travel event where you go to see different leagues in New York and teams in New York and talk to them and learn about what they're doing. And then as soon as I got to Sloan, I got involved in the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. And ultimately, I was really fortunate. My first year, I actually interviewed while at the conference as an organizer with StubHub. And I had a pretty broad definition for myself of what working in sports could look like for me. I wasn't like, hey, I'm only going to work for a league or only work for a team. Those were certainly of interest to me. But I was looking at other companies like a StubHub or a Ticketmaster, also looking at like Under Armour, Nike. And so I wound up interning with StubHub. I worked on a project they were doing at the time called all-in pricing, where they wanted to move to a place where the price you see is the price you pay. Spoiler alert, did not work well. The trick is everybody has to do it. If only one company does it, your tickets just look more expensive. Although Net Promoter Score went way up, so a little bit of both sides of that. But I was really fortunate coming out of that to get a full-time job with StubHub, and so I moved out there to do pricing analytics after business school. And I really enjoyed the job, but I had never really worked in industry before. I'd always been in consulting, and so I'd been able to go kind of from project to project, and I was kind of yearning to, one, get back east, but also to be back in an environment where I could work on lots of different projects and not just kind of in one area. And I was speaking with Jessica Gelman, who I'd become close with while at Sloan, and she had mentioned a role that had become available at the NFL. And it was in their club business development group, which is effectively an internal consulting team. And it was around strategy and analytics, which was really my sweet spot. So I got that job. And I would say actually that although I was not at StubHub for a long period of time, being able to combine my consulting experience with the secondary market experience that I had from working at StubHub made me a unique and an ideal candidate for the NFL. So I worked in the club business development department at the NFL for 5 years. Like I said, I was working on strategy and analytics, really focused mostly on ticketing and sponsorship. So CBD at the league office works with all the teams to help them drive their local revenue, everything from ticketing and sponsorship to fan experience, really the driveway to driveway experience. And then also helps on league events like Pro Bowl, Super Bowl, International Series. I got to do most of the ticketing work around our Mexico City game, which was really great. And after about 5 years, I was growing a little restless, and candidly, I wanted to move a bit quicker in my career than I thought was going to be possible at the league office. And so I started looking for other opportunities, and the gentleman who ran my group at the NFL for 4 of the 5 years I was there had taken the chief business officer role at LA28, and he heard I was looking for a job, and he reached out and said, hey, why don't you come work for me? And I said, great, doing what? And he's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. So I took a little bit of a leap of faith, moved across the country, and took this job with LA28. Really started a bit as like a jack of all trades, working on some venue stuff, some ticketing stuff, some hospitality stuff. I think I was employee 47. And so it's really evolved since then, and I've been able to, take on very distinct areas of responsibility, including ticketing, hospitality, accommodations, and food and beverage, which all live under me, and grow my career that way. I also took a job that I knew would push me outside my comfort zone. I'm someone that likes structure and guidance and guardrails. And while I was not going to be jumping directly into a startup, LA28 really has a startup vibe to it. And so it was operating and continues to operate in a lot of ambiguity, a lot of unknowns, which is really has been really great for me to stretch some of my areas of comfort, skill, expertise into new areas and allow me to grow my career. And that's where I'm at today.
Hello. Hey, I'm Nikhil Marar, so I'm the manager of business analytics and strategy at the Lakers. This is actually my first full season with the team, so pretty new to the league, but I definitely this is my fourth season in sports overall. So people always ask me, what do you do for the Lakers, right? Big brand, big team, and I say I do everything. When you work on the business side of a team and you have a small group, our department's only 4 people. It's awesome that you'll be able to put your hand in every department that you get to work with. So what I tell people that I do is I work on our ticket sales, so making sure that we price our tickets right, and we're making sure that we're selling out every game. On our corporate partnerships, we're making sure all of our deals, our analysis are done well, and we're making sure we're getting every dollar from our corporate partners, and we're making sure that all the activations are ready to go at the game. We work a lot on our broadcast insights, so Laker games are always on TV, which is awesome. So we get to get all those TV ratings, and we're making sure that all of the fans are tuned in. So that's another part of the piece that we get to do. Then after that, we like to build our internal data. So working on our CRM system, making sure that we get every single piece of data from our fan, whether that be attendance, food and beverage, merchandise sales, even some demographic data. We want to make sure that we know our fans inside and out, because those are the ones that are always spending money with the team. So building out our CRM system is something that is new for our team, and I love it because it's awesome to see what the fan base looks like. The Lakers are such an old organization that I like to see how the older fans are coming to games, and also see how the younger fans are coming, right? The younger fans are the ones that are coming early. They like to watch all the warm-ups, which is awesome to see, because we track all of that data through live data that comes into our system. So being able to build different personas on our fans is something that I love to do at the Lakers. Another big thing that we do is making sure that we manage all the revenue coming in. So if there's any dollar that comes in through the team, it comes through my department first. And for a team of 4, you can just imagine of everything that comes in that our team has to handle it, and making sure that all the departments of the team know, whether it's all of our F&B data or our merchandise sales or our ticketing sales. We got to make sure that each department knows what the business is like from a game-to-game basis, from a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of what a high level of what my job looks like. I have a better story of how I got there. So I'm a first-generation American. I went to the University of Tennessee, where I studied business analytics, supply chain management, and information technology. I didn't know really what I wanted to do with that. I didn't think I was going to work in sports. I didn't even know that was a thing, of taking analytics to sports. So I just did pretty well in school. I got to learn regression analysis, database management, all the nerdy things that you do in school. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really intern in undergrad, kind of would look back on it and be like, internships are great. So what I did, I just gave myself some more time. I moved to Indiana. I went to grad school over there for data science and sports analytics. And that's when I really was like, I really want to work in sports. I had opportunities to work with sports data through the university, which was really great. But I always tell people, it's whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So a lot of my classmates would love working on these projects, and after our assignments are due, we just go home and we'll do even more analysis. Then when we have interviews or we come to conferences, we're able to just speak on, hey, this is what we built with this data set. I know that this is something you guys do, and I've already done it as a student. So that was a really big thing for me when going to grad school and just working with the data itself. I actually came to my first Sloan conference as a grad student, and I competed in the hackathon that comes every year. I think it was right before this. And that was really great for me. So I met my 3 teammates, the morning of. We had breakfast. We all went to different schools across the United States. And, we went into this and was like, what are we trying to get out of this, right? Each one of us were like, yeah, we're going to win this thing. Like, we didn't come here to, just to have an analysis and take interviews and meet people. Like, we're going to win this. So we really, it was on basketball data, which is great because all of us had basketball knowledge. And we sat in the room, we coded for 6 hours, we made our 3-slide presentation from 6 hours. We get to present in front of a lot of people from ESPN who was hosting it. And then 3 days later, we ended up winning it, which was just like crazy because we all put our mind to it and we were like, we're here to win. So we took it very competitive. We ended up winning it, and that was like the moment that it opened a lot of doors for me to start my sports career. It was unfortunate that COVID started a couple weeks later. So I was kind of bummed out. I was like, am I going to get a job in sports? There's no fans going into the games. So the way that I took it was, let me find a remote internship. So the best thing that happened to me for starting my career was I accepted a business intelligence internship from a hometown team, Nashville SC in the MLS. Even though it was remote and it was my hometown team, I got to meet some of my teammates in person. I got to go to some games, which is really weird when you go to games with no fans because you could just hear all the players talking. And working in soccer, there's a lot of Spanish and different languages, and you're just like mind blown of just sitting there. It was like, this is so cool. Like, there's nobody here except the staff and just the players. So that was really cool. Being a part of that team, even though it was remote, was awesome because we ended up having a helping hand in building the largest soccer-specific stadium in the United States, which opened up last year. So the cool thing about that project was we were selling for a new stadium while also trying to get fans to come into our old stadium where, with COVID, some fans didn't want to come, some did. So it was cool to work on a brand new project. We were selling a stadium that wasn't even built. So imagine trying to tell somebody to buy a ticket for something they can't even see, right? So we did a lot of data analysis through email marketing. We did all of it for people clicking on our ticketing links and, kind of marketing them that way. It's actually kind of crazy that I went to the first game even though I wasn't there, and it was 30,000 people were in there last year. And I just was looking out in the crowd. I was like, man, I was a part of this project to begin with by just using data to start selling people before there was anything to look at. So after my internship ended with Nashville and I finished up grad school, I ended up moving to Chicago to be a data analyst for Chicago Fire FC. So pretty similar role, kind of went out of my hometown and thought it was a cool project. So something cool about that I learned was they had a brand new, they were moving back to Soldier Field, and it was the first year with fans back into to the stadium. So I thought that was awesome to be part of a team coming back to an NFL-sized stadium. There's a lot of work to do. You can just imagine a sport like soccer trying to sell out 60,000 seats, right? Awesome thing that we get to do. It was very cool that I also got to be part of a rebrand for the team. So the thing that we did with the rebrand was we wanted to get all of our fans and our supporters' input on a rebrand. So through data, we grabbed all of our supporter data, all of the community, and then we marketed them. It's like, what would you want to see in a new logo, right? What would you want to see the team, the new colors? So through data, we were doing all the survey analysis. We were looking at fan demographics. We were looking at all types of data analysis to be like, what is the perfect crest going to look like? So by collecting all the data, doing analysis on it, we ended up coming with this brand new crest that our fans loved, which was pretty cool to be part of because I don't know how many teams rebrand very often. So it was cool to be part of that project to work with data on that. We built a lot of ticket sales dashboards, corporate partnership dashboards, all for the new stadium because it wasn't just new for me, it was new for the whole team. Not everyone knew what it was going to be like to play in an NFL-sized stadium for a soccer team. So, using data, we were able to increase our attendance and our revenue year over year. I was there for 2 seasons. So it was great to, be part of that project. After that, I had a small heart for basketball, working for soccer in 3 years, and the Lakers had a really great opportunity open up where they were trying to build everything internal. So I was employee number 3 with the Lakers on our business analytics and strategy team, and the thing that really sold me on that, I got to move to LA, which was kind of different for me. Living in Chicago, you can just imagine having parkas and walking to work in 0-degree weather, and then now I can go to the office and go to the beach after. So it got sold a little bit on that. But building everything internal was what was the best thing that I got to do. So I was able to hire an analyst. We're building everything internal. So all the data pipelines that come in through our sales, our attendance data, all of our corporate partnership deals. We have all of that living internal where anyone on the corporate partnership or ticketing team can log into the system and they can see everything in real time. Everything with data pipelines that you build out is done through my team. So the way that I think of it is I want everything to be as efficient as possible and making sure that everything is in real time. Because I think if in basketball, what I've learned is with the back-to-back games and so many games in one season, it's everything in real time is what our team needs to make actionable insights game over game. So a big part of like what I get to do now from learning from all the experiences I've had is, building out an internal team. Relationship building is a big thing for me. And then also just making sure that I'm always learning in my job, right? I've had so many stops along the way, got to move to a lot of cool cities, but it was only because it was a willingness that I wanted to learn and grow as a person, but also as my career. So that was like the biggest advice that a couple of my former bosses gave that I'm still close today. It's just like, make sure you're always learning and you're willing to learn. So then you can go up to the next position and you're gonna do like what you want to do. And right now, I can honestly say it's a dream job, working for the Lakers. I never would have thought I would have been there 3 years ago when I was a student at Sloan. And then 3 years now, I'm working for the Lakers. So it's like, you never know where you can go. It's just always have a mindset of like willingness to learn and grow, build your skill sets, and just take any job opportunity you can, because you never know what will lead on to the next one or who you'll meet. So that's just some advice for my career playbook of kind of how I got here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Ruggiero, the co-founder and CEO of a company called Sports Innovation Lab. So like everyone on stage, we're a fan insights company. We're about 6.5 years old, and I'll get into what we actually do. But we're trying to help the industry understand their fan, their consumer, and then build smarter revenue strategies, selling more tickets, selling more optimizing your partnerships, et cetera, et cetera. So I was actually a 4-time Olympian. That's my first career. I was an athlete, and as a 9-year-old. Growing up in LA, my family on career day, I showed up in my hockey gear, and they all thought I was crazy because girls didn't play hockey, nor was there an opportunity to play in the Olympics. There was no pro league. Didn't even know that it existed way over on the East Coast at the collegiate level. So I was just a kid with a dream wanting to play for the LA Kings. That was my career aspirations as a young person. My father and my mom and my family, fortunately, gave light to that. They didn't tell me that's impossible. They supported me just like my brother and my sister, who are also young hockey players. So my career started in sports. I was fortunate enough to, like I said, to play in 4 Olympics. I have a gold medal, a couple silvers, a bronze. I have more games played than any other man or woman in a USA Hockey jersey. So very, very proud of that statistic. So my first career was sports, and I think a lot of athletes get pushed into, oh, you should commentate, oh, you should coach. There's sort of the mindset most people think that's what you'd be good at or what you actually would like to do, when in reality the majority are people and they have other things that they might want to do outside of sport. I was one of those that I'm like, yeah, I like coaching. I definitely do commentating still, but like as a full-time thing, there's other things out there. And so one thing that I think was always part of my training and why I was able to play so long, I always wanted to be a better version of myself. I'm like, how can I get better this year? And it came back to data. Like, how do I track my sleep? How do I optimize my nutrition? What does my training plan look like? How do I personalize myself? And this was a while ago. I retired 2011. So all the cool stuff that is on the market today didn't exist. We started using heart rate monitors earlier, but it was part of who I was. And so I went back to business school, decided, I went to Harvard undergrad, so I went back to the business school there, and that actually gave me a really interesting kind of worldly perspective on all the other careers I could potentially go into. I dipped my toe in the hedge fund water for a year because I thought, oh, that's what you're supposed to do out of business school, is go get a real job and a different career. And I worked at this hedge fund called Bridgewater. They're at the time, and they still are the biggest hedge fund in the world. But what they did to beat the market was use data. They were one of the first to create an algorithm to see kind of macro trends and apply that. And again, in my head, I'm like, oh, that's where I want to work. So that led me to I spent 8 years on the International Olympic Committee. I'm sitting on all these board meetings. I was the chief strategy officer of the LA Olympic bid, helping them build out what that vision of the future Olympic Games would look like and sell that in. So I was sitting on all these various executive boards and seeing really from the executive level down, like how are they making these big, massive strategic decisions, multi-billion-dollar decisions. I was on the board of the U.S. Olympic Paralympic Committee, so I went from like just getting a really interesting bird's eye view of the industry on the business side and realizing there really was a lack of data, however you say it. I think there was a rap last year Jeff's put together on data. So that led me to Sports Innovation Lab. I said, what if I could help solve this problem in the market, which was like I'm not only an athlete and it's part of my DNA of like to be better, you need to understand what you're working with, which we all get, I think, on stage, to like building a company that's trying to solve that problem. So everyone's like, how the hell why are you starting a company in this space? And I'm like, well, let me walk you through that like circuitous route. And then they're like, oh, that makes sense. So what we do, again, is we're obsessed with understanding the fan, pulling in multiple data sources, trying to act as almost a clean room that will allow you to have an outside-in perspective on your fans. So instead of looking at just your own CRM, we're trying to bring the 95% of your fans that don't come through your building, but they're buying something, they're sharing something, they're liking something, they're viewing. So we're trying to aggregate different data sources to provide that insight to teams, leagues, brands, media partners, anyone that really wants to get a competitive analysis across their landscape, but also optimize partnerships or increase revenue at the end of the day. If you know who your consumer is, your fan, you're going to have a better ticketing strategy, a better partnership strategy. So we're big nerds, which we love. We were proud of that. It's given me a really interesting perspective on technology. We've done a lot of work as a company understanding the B2B marketplace. And so my career path has been, I think, one more entrepreneurial, where no one thought a little girl from California could play in the Olympics. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to happen. And I put it in my head, and I had to like figure out the team around me, and I had to get a lot of no's and called names and get cut from teams. And I had faced a lot of adversity, but like I made it. And it gave me almost the confidence to realize like, okay, like if someone out here has that entrepreneurial spirit where they see a problem in the market, like you can solve it. And it's hard, obviously, it's hard starting a company. But for me, my path is really finding that problem that I thought really existed and trying to get ahead of the market and solve it for the industry. So that's what I do now. I'm super passionate about women's sports, clearly. I was a female athlete. I don't think women's sports has gotten the same kind of investment in any way, shape, or form. And so a couple years ago, again, I started a project within the company called the Fan Project, and we got fans to give us their data, and we did this amazing analysis of showing that there's actually a market for women's sports, and you should be spending money in women's sports, and that on top of that, women's sports get unfairly compared to men's sports when it's actually a different product, it's a different audience, but it has unrealized potential. And so we're doing a lot of work now with various women's sports properties and brands, and really proud of that work, because again, it's allowing me to tie my personal passion with my work and make a meaningful difference in this industry, which is, I think, at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, how many years later I'm able to like have a career in something I really care about through an angle that's very different than, I served on the board of the Women's Sports Foundation. I'm still very active at the IOC level and their gender equality commissions, but everyone's been, in my opinion, approaching this market through the lens of like charity and like it's the right thing to do. And I'm saying, no, cut through it. It's good. You can make money, and trying to take the approach of like showing the industry there's a market, how to do it smartly, how to really understand that consumer and build a business model fit for purpose. So I'm moving more personally in that direction. I love what I'm doing in general, but I'm really proud of the work we do with the WNBA or Athletes Unlimited or any of the various women's sports brands. Like Ally Financial just committed 50% of their brand, money towards women's sports. So that's like, you can tell I'm as an athlete that I think waking up didn't think I would have a career in sports playing, or on the business side, I get excited talking to young people that now know they can actually have a career. They don't have to look the same, right? Diversity is going to be a bigger piece of, like, you're going to have people of color, women are going to get more opportunities. It's not just who you know now, it's how, like, what can you bring to the table? So there's a fairness element, I think, that I'm really excited about in this industry. But I encourage any entrepreneurs in the room that are thinking about, like, starting a company, and in the tech space in particular, it's just taking off, and there's so many problems to solve that the tech solutions and smart young people could plug into this ecosystem to solve. It's also something I'm personally paying attention to. So yeah, my career is very circuitous, but it all sort of stitches together in the same way, which is empower the industry to be a better version of itself through data, through insights, through strategy, and try to make it more inclusive as a whole. So that's me. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Sinaraja, Senior Vice President of Business at the Buffalo Bills. In keeping with the LA theme of this wonderful panel, I actually have a 310 number. I lived in LA for a little while as well, so I'm not sure if the organizers planned that, but it's been a very, very interesting story here to hear about. I went to school down the road at Boston College, so that's where I started my career 20 years ago now, which makes me feel old talking about this, but I worked at General Mills for about 3 years doing corporate finance, which is when I lived in LA, and then I went to business school at the University of Virginia's Darden Business School. I was actually going to go and work on Wall Street after school, because like Angela, I thought after you go to business school, you got to go work in Wall Street or a buy-side hedge fund. So I was going down that path, but I happened to go to a business school fair, I forget what it was called even 15, 16 years ago, and I just happened to stumble upon this little booth for a company called Google. And at the time, Google, as you can imagine now, it's a huge company. Back then, it's still a very large company, but for context, I was a Yahoo user, which most of you guys probably don't even remember, and I just finished pitching Yahoo as a buyout candidate to the street in my summer internship. So, I wasn't really interested in tech. I wasn't even interested in Google. What caught my interest, which started my career, was they offered a role that was focused on international markets. And I'd always want to live internationally. I'm a native Canadian. Sorry, Angela, I was cheering against you back those days, but I loved your career. But they offered a role that was going to focus on Asia and Latin America, which I thought was interesting because Asia and Latin America are very far from each other, but it was based in Mountain View, California. So I moved out there. I thought to myself, hey, look, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but Google on my resume might be a good thing. So I took that job, and I had spent 5 years there. Some of the things that I did there was really the introduction to large data sets. So the first year I was there, we were launching YouTube in Brazil and Mexico. We launched our local entities in those markets. We looked at moving our Asia headquarters to Singapore. And everything Google did and still does is very much data-driven. So it was a really good sort of first experience with big data sets and working on that. I ended up moving out to Asia, lived there for about 3 years, spent some time in Singapore, Australia, and Japan. We bought a company called DoubleClick, which is a large ad tech company and big in the data space, so more data-intensive businesses. And then we started looking at data, and we realized there was markets for YouTube in Asia and so forth with content. And I was part of doing the first few deals with some K-pop and J-pop stars now that are very, very ubiquitous across the platform. I moved back to the US and I ran search content partnerships. So best way I can describe that, and that's again large data sets looking at query logs and so forth, is if you type in any sports team, we did partnerships. I ran partnerships there and did partnerships with every major league in the world. Did a deal with Stats Inc. To acquire sports data so that you guys could, when you put in a query, you can see information on your favorite player, favorite sports team, et cetera. I actually came to this conference in 2012 for the first time because I was negotiating a deal with Stats and a smaller company called Sports Data. And I happened to meet a guy named Andrew Miller, who who was working at the Cleveland Indians at the time, and he and I talked, and he had a California background. I was living in San Francisco. He was an MBA. I was an MBA. We'd played a little college baseball, all this stuff, and there's some similarities. But they had a strategy analytics group at the Indians. And I had not been to Cleveland in a long time. It was like a 90% pay cut, but I really wanted to get into sports, which is a common theme. I think if you want to be in this industry, there's a certain amount of sacrifice that I think all of us have made, and all of you will have to look at and consider as you look at opportunities. So I moved out, and I moved out there because of the quality of the people that were there in the Cleveland office, and the sort of the wide-ranging nature of strategy and analytics. So I got to meet Cezanne there because we were in Cleveland together, and we were developing strategies for monetization, looking at ticket strategies. I even did some deals with our corporate partnership team to increase our revenue there. I did a concession deal. I moved us from Ticketmaster to Tickets.com, and then we did a capital raise and did a whole renovation of our ballpark. And everything that we did was related to data, right? We segmented our fans. We looked at, the markets we needed to go into. We were sort of one of the few teams at that time really embracing dynamic pricing and getting hard into the data and really leveraging that to drive pricing every night to get yield management, which, now is very much commonplace in the industry, but even 8, 9, 10 years ago wasn't as large across all teams. So that was a great opportunity. For family reasons, I had to move back to California, and so this is where my career went into the media side. So I took a job at the Weather Company, which owns the Weather Channel, weather.com, all those digital properties, and I ran global strategy and business development, doing media deals. So, for everything from, if you look at your iPhone and look at the weather icon there, that was a partnership we did. We did partnerships with Google and Facebook, and then we did large media deals with large media companies around the world. And weather is actually even more data-driven, as you can imagine, because every time you look at the weather and look at that information, that's a data point that's being collected by the data provider. And there's also location data that's very, very important. And advertisers find that interesting. So, we created a few businesses that were tying weather data to business results and POS information, and could derive insights that drove consumer behaviors and drove consumer purchasing patterns that large brands like Walmart and Home Depot would use. So it was a pretty lucrative business, and IBM ended up buying the digital side. So I left there with my boss, and we went to a company called Ziff Davis. And Ziff Davis, for those of you that don't know, is a media company, a media internet company that buys assets. So I was doing corporate development, strategy, and then helping run a business unit. And we were big in the gaming world, so we own a company called IGN that did a lot of esports sort of ratings, reviews, and so forth. We had a lot of tech stuff. We had a company called Offers.com that did a lot of coupon information and e-commerce, and we had a huge performance marketing business. So, part of what, and it's brought all my career together, when you type in, what's the best product, usually you get rankings and reviews on Google. That leads you to sites, and those sites, give you information and then lead you to different places that you can actually transact. And we were kind of the middle layer of that, driving a whole load of volume there. This is a common theme, too, in my career that I would share with you, is relationships, just like everybody has mentioned, are really important. So, I mentioned earlier that I had that relationship with Andrew, who now is the CEO of the Vikings. And, he and I kept in touch after I left the Indians, now Guardians, obviously, as their name changed. And, he introduced me into a search firm. The search firm put me up for a role in 2017 with the Buffalo Bills owners, the Pagula family, who's wonderful, Terry and Kim. I interviewed for an analytics role that was on hockey and football. That didn't work out, but 3 years later, so right in 2020, I got a call from Kim asking her if I was interested in in working for her on the business side. And I'm a native of Toronto. I grew up a big Bills fan. My parents happen to live there, so it was a no-brainer. And for the last 3 years, it's been a wonderful ride. We've built out a great strategy and analytics team, that support both the Bills and the Sabres. Really proud of what they've done under our leader, Brendan DeShera, and really proud of our organization. We've been through a lot, obviously, but really happy to be on this panel, and I think we're going to go to Q&A after this.
So we're gonna do Q&A now. So if you have a question, you can just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you.
I have a couple, but I'll just start with one. Hi, I'm Carolyn Ross. I live down the street. I'm a student. I also work in innovation management, and I coach hockey. Angela, you're an absolute hero. So I think I'll actually start with Allison and maybe Jason. Your experience with weather and media will also be relevant. But for Allison, when you got into StubHub, you were kind of using it as a stepping stone. I'm just wondering, like, when you went into those interviews and they asked you where you see yourself in 5 years, or like, why are you passionate about this role? Were you transparent about it kind of being a stepping stone, or did you really buy into that experience? And then did you find it challenging while you were working there to keep your options open and look for that next step while still kind of dedicating yourself to that role?
Yeah, what's interesting is I don't know that I knew StubHub was going to be the stepping stone that it was. I think I went in assuming I'd be there. I knew I didn't want to be in San Francisco long term. No offense to San Francisco, just wasn't going to be my vibe. So I knew it wasn't a long-term career decision, but when I was interviewing, I mean, to me, what was really fascinating was it was taking a lot of the exact type of work I had been doing before and putting it into sports. And that's really what I focused on was, I was really interested in working in sports. I have never been one of those people that was going to take any job in sports just to be in sports. I think sports to me would not be interesting if I wasn't doing work that I care about, that challenges me, that intrigues me. And so that was really what brought me to StubHub, was this interest in the pricing analytics. I'd done pricing work in the healthcare space in the consulting firm I worked at. I think what I look back, hindsight's 2020, is I don't know that I would have gotten the NFL job had I not taken that StubHub job. And I didn't know that at the time, but the secondary market was big then, but not nearly what it is today or what it was when I went to join the NFL. And so having that experience, and again, like, you don't know this when you're taking the job, but having specific secondary market experience made me, again, a unique candidate for the NFL job and brought in expertise to club business development that they were really looking for, that they were lacking. So again, I don't know that I knew that it was a stepping stone at the time, other than I knew I wasn't going to live in San Francisco for the rest of my life.
Hi, my name is Varun Ramanathan. I'm a senior in high school, so not exactly much experience in anything. I just came here to kind of get a gist of what sports analytics would be like. So this is a question for Nikhil. You mentioned that if you could do college over again, you would have gone for internships. So how would you suggest because next year is when I start college, how would you suggest I look for internships with sports teams to kind of position myself to be in the industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess you're doing the right thing already by being here. I definitely didn't come till I was a grad student for my first time, so it's good that you're getting that experience. For me, what I did actually was all these jobs that I thought I wanted, I would just look at the job, the description, and if I didn't know how to do it, I would put it to a new document, and I'll do that for every job, and I would just learn everything off that. So there's a lot of publicly available data now. So if I didn't know how to do a regression analysis and it's required for a job, well, I'm probably not going to get that job, but let me learn how to do a regression analysis project. I just kept on doing that for every single job that I really wanted. I would just grab the job description, put it in a new file, and I would just do those projects on my own. And then whenever I did interview, right there, I was just telling them, hey, I did this. I did it with this data set, publicly available. I put it on my GitHub. So that I was able to talk about what the job actually was. Because it's hard when these job descriptions are so long now and they ask for so much. But if you can talk about your experiences, even if it's a personal project, that's kind of how I took it. And that kind of led to internships while I was in grad school, and then full-time jobs is kind of by experience. Hope that helped answer your question.
Hi, I'm Sid. I am a data analyst at a creative agency. I'm on a Department of Defense contract, but I also recently went back to school full-time because I eventually want to be a data scientist in the NFL or in the space industry. And I went to a boot camp, and a thing that I noticed at my data science boot camp and now with a lot of the people that I work with as an analyst is that many of us get tunnel vision on using the coolest, sexiest modeling techniques or the most cutting-edge analytics tools, and sometimes it's just for the sake of doing so. And I was wondering, this question's for any of you. When it comes to budding data scientists or budding analysts, how important do you think developing our creativity is alongside our technical skills? And have there been any times or specific projects in your career that you felt that intersection of creative thinking and technical skills really advanced the work or served the purpose that you had at that moment?
So I've hired a lot of data scientists across different industries that I've been in, and the best data scientists that I've seen, because they're all exceptionally smart, way smarter than me, are the ones that are able to tell some stories. So I think the storytelling behind that to actually make people that aren't as data savvy understand what you're trying to say is really the art of it. And I think that's where a lot of the creativity comes in, where I've seen really solid data scientists, like when we had one at Ziff Davis, I can just think of one, like he was able to put together narratives around explaining why, you know, certain data sets made sense and told certain stories for advertisers, right, so that they could understand it in their understanding or their words. So I think that creativity is really important, because, you know, again, if you're going to go and show some detailed model, it's sometimes hard for, again, those that aren't data savvy, including myself, really, for that matter, at that level, to be able to understand it. So I think there are plenty of examples of that, and I would encourage you to keep, you know, thinking about that to blend sort of that qualitative and quantitative approach together.
Hi, my name is Kendall Brown, and I am currently an MBA candidate at UCLA Anderson, so the LA connection runs even deeper here. I want to first say that I very much value the diversity of this panel. It's not something that you see often in the world of sports. On that note, could you talk about career progression in an industry where, traditionally speaking, there aren't people in positions of power that look like you, and how you maybe use that to your advantage?
There are not too many people that look like me, especially becoming an international student as well, coming to this country. I think, kind of going back to what Jason said, connections were really important for me, and kind of how I was able to tell my story to a lot of people and keep in touch with those a lot of people. Sometimes the how you're different becomes your secret weapon as well, and you can bring more opportunities and creativity because you know, you have a different background or you have a diverse background. I think at the Cavs, everyone that worked there pretty much was a huge basketball fan, or they maybe played basketball in college or in high school. They really loved the sport, and I didn't have that affinity. Mostly they were from Cleveland, so it was a hometown thing. I didn't have any of those affinities, so I was able to look at some things more objectively when decisions were being made. So, because, you know, fans that come to the game, some of it is client entertainment, some of it is your core fan, some of it is you're just looking to do something with your family, maybe you're going to one game or two games. So I did find myself in situations where they would kind of go really deep into one thought, and I was like, well, but maybe if the fans are just casually coming, like what are we thinking for them? Because we have those segments as well. So I remember that being kind of one differentiation I was able to observe. Having said this, I also did put myself as a soccer fan. My team is Fenerbahce, so I was like, well, Cezanne, if you were working for Fenerbahce, you would have thought like them. So I kind of was able to really see their point as well. In this job, when I got the position, I was the kind of the youngest and the only woman and again, the only international at the kind of the SVP level at Access. And again, I mostly used it to my advantage. I think it's really the style I have or I react to things is different than others. And once again, some of it is back to, I like the industry, I like music, I like sports, but I'm not the most core fan, so I kind of have an objective approach. And sometimes even in our music business or with some of our account managers or SVPs of music, like, well, it's a great thought, but again, we have all these different customers that we have to take care of as well. What's going to be our strategy for that? So I don't know if this directly answers your question, but that's how I handled it.
Yeah, I'll just add, don't say you're a fan out of the gates. I think that's right. They're hiring, sports is professionalizing, whether working on the team, the league, the brand. I mean, the whole ecosystem is becoming more professionalized. With that, I think there's an acknowledgement in this industry that it needs to look more diverse. It needs to be more diverse and inclusive. So I think it's actually a huge turning point where there's going to be more opportunities because organizations are actually looking for diversity because they're getting slammed because they're not. So I think it's a turning point for people that aren't straight white men, to be honest, to have more opportunities. With that being said, my dad gave me a great piece of advice because, like I said, I got cut from teams. I was a girl, and that sucked. My brother got to play, and I got left at home. And he's like, Angela, you got to be twice as smart. You got to work twice as hard. And in this case, you got to have twice the connections, right? So I would just say, know that it's changing, I think this industry is, again, looking for more smart people that don't look the same. So the door is like opening, but you got to get yourself through that door and go in with eyes wide open that, like, if you get the job, I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm not checking the box. I'm the only woman on several boards. Like, I'm not here because I'm a woman, hopefully. Like, you almost want to disprove. In some ways, you have to earn respect. So I feel like my advice always is to young people or anyone, honestly, is if you work twice as hard, if you're twice as smart, you can, like what you did, I love this. You're like, oh, I'm just going to learn how to do SQL on the side, or I'm going to figure out how to do that thing. Like, that is going to give you a competitive advantage when they do open that door and are looking for more diversity of thought, experience, and I think it's a huge advantage. You got a little bit of I feel like I got a little chip on my shoulder my whole life, and now finally the world is saying, okay, we want to diversify our workforce. It's good for the bottom line. Everyone's starting to recognize it's good for business. So just approach it like you got something to prove, and you're going to get that job because you earned it, not because you're checking a box exercise.
Thanks. So for me, I'm a data science major, and it's one thing to look at the data and uncover findings, but then I guess explaining what I uncover to non-technical people is always a challenge because it's a way to not lose information but just change the way you're presenting it. And do you guys have any advice on just how to work on that as a skill?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing is incredibly important, especially when you think about sports and how lean organizations are. Having people that can do both, having people that can do the data analysis, but also package it and explain it in a way that someone that is not knees deep in the data, maybe doesn't have a data background, can understand. Having someone that can do both of those things rather than having to hire two different people is really important. I'd say, from my experience, my own experience, as well as working with people that are developing those skills, it's a lot of practice of presentation and of packaging the information. It's not about losing any of the analysis you did, but it's about figuring out and starting from, like, what is it we are trying to solve, right? What is the question we are trying to answer, and go from there. You can have about 50 slides in the appendix that go through every part of the analysis so that if someone is digging into exactly what you did, you've got the backup there, but keeping it to the point, keeping it about the answer to the question and how you got there and what you're doing to support that answer, I think is the way to go, and just practicing packaging that together and contextualizing what you've done in terms of what was the stated goal of the project is really important. But that skill set to me, I personally think is one of the most important in the kind of sports data world, is that crossover of those skills.
Yeah, I was gonna just say, like, I think you said it perfectly, like, work on your presentation, your PowerPoint skills, because ultimately that's showing, not telling. So a lot of folks that are really rigorous in their data understanding and analytical skill set, right, want to tell how complex their model is and the complexity that they went through to figure out the solution. And ultimately, that's great and very, very well understood by people that are savvy in this space. But for the most part, right, you got to make sure that you're thinking about how to present that story. And again, I go back to the earlier answer I gave. Storytelling is even more important because you got to think about the purpose of what you're trying to convey and convey that story about the data, right? That's what separates, I think, taking it from analytics to more the strategy side, and then eventually, higher things in your career, because you got to be able to say, okay, here's what the data is saying, here's what I think, or here are the 3 options you should be doing or considering, right, depending on that. And taking that step is, I think, a really key area for, folks like yourselves to continue to develop and learn, because, in school, right, you're going through, variations of R and Python and all this stuff and learning to code, which is amazing. But the application, I think, is the most important now, too.
My name is Kieran Patel with the Portland Timbers and Thorns. This is kind of more of a fun question, but what's the most interesting interview question you've been asked, or what's the most interesting interview question that you do ask potential candidates?
I will just say that sometimes I ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I follow up by saying, anyone that answered that question in 2015 got it completely wrong with the pandemic. So I think I'm trying to think about, like, if I got any interesting question. I can't remember getting it. I used to ask, like, if you were an object, what would you be? And later on, it really didn't make sense, so I don't know why I did it, but I'm sure I made the other person uncomfortable, so.
Yeah, I'd say my interview style is pretty boring. I am highly focused on cultural fit. I think that if I hire someone smart, they can probably learn to do the job. So I focus a lot on understanding, like, what that person is like, what their interests are. I like to know that someone has a life outside of work also, because I think in all of these jobs, especially in sports, and especially at teams where your seasons are crazy, and I feel like there's not really off seasons anymore anyways, ensuring that you have some work-life balance is gonna create a better worker in the office. So I like to know that someone's got interests outside of the 4 walls of our building.
I don't have anything funny, but just along those lines, when I interview, my company's a venture-backed startup, so we're very different than a Google. So really understanding not just the values, because that's so important. Like, are you going to vibe in our culture and, like, our values, but, like, consider, like, what stage and size and the working style of that organization, and that you could get, or like, you could ask specific questions on both sides to try to figure out, is this, like, fast and, like, moving, you don't have all the same guardrails and you got to, like, go, or is this, like, no, slow and steady ship that moves through time and, a lot of more politics, and you have to be okay with either one. So it's not, I do have some things, but probably because I work for Bridgewater, but I can't share those if anyone knows that organization. But no, the culture and the style, I think usually the interview is, like, about the person and the job spec, and there's not enough about that big ring around, which is, like, where are you working? Who are you working with? What is the style? That's the thing I'm always honing. Yeah, this person's got all the skills, but, like, are they going to fit in? Are they going to, like, get it? Is the most important.
One quick thing I'll add also is I like to read in resumes, I like to read people's interests sections because I find that it's just tells me a little bit more about them and can break the ice. And honestly, I think part of the reason my NFL interview went as well as it did is I had just updated my resume and I had put in my interests that I'm a big HGTV renovation show fan. And the individual who became my boss at the NFL, also big HGTV fan. And so I literally walked off the elevator and he's like, oh my God, Property Brothers and this and that. And immediately we're vibing on something fully outside of the actual job.
So when I was at Google for the 5 years, I interviewed a ton of people, and they were very, very analytical, and how to interview and so forth. So I won't bore you with all the questions that they would ask. It was quite amazing, and you can probably look it up. But they had attributes of how to look at folks. One was the scholastic aptitude and so forth. One was just general competency and sort of brain power. And then there was another box that was focused on googliness, which I still really can't explain to you. It's just one of those things that and it's more like what Allison said around the culture aspect of it. Because at the end of the day, and most of you guys are students, the most important classes I think I took, at least at business school, and I'll be curious to hear what everybody else said, was organizational behavior, which everybody used to tell me when they'd come to school, that's the most important class, and I'd be like, this is ridiculous, accounting and finance and data and whatever the most important, but it's really true. Because that cultural aspect ultimately will drive success for those people that you hire and success in your organization as well.
Hi, my name is Matt Nettie. I'm an attorney at Northeastern University and receiving my master's in sports leadership from Northeastern. Angela, this question's directed at you, but interested to hear any thoughts from the panel. You mentioned that women's sports, the industry, has a lot of untapped potential, and your work is trying to get investors to realize that. Coming from a legal perspective, collegiate sports obviously is going through a huge shift, and women's athletes taking advantage of their publicity rights, their NIL rights. There were reports that women's college basketball players actually made more deals, more money from NIL deals than men's college basketball players during the first year of NIL rights. How have you seen the shift since women athletes were able to take advantage of their NIL rights? And do you think that that's proof to investors of the industry that there is a lot of untapped potential here?
Okay, how do I be succinct? Because I could talk about this for hours. So we study trends, my company. We've done a lot of work in this space. One thing that we found through our research over the past few years, we call it the fluid fan. It's this fickle consumer that's attention economy. You need to do more to appease them, to bring them in your funnel, to keep them in your funnel. It's not just the diehard. So this fluid fan concept, I think, is particularly relevant for women's sports. What we found through our research is that fans of women's sports, this is men and women, there's a few macro things going on that have shifted. NIL is indicative of that, but technology's allowed more access, so you can actually watch the long tail. So consider sport, if you're working in the sports industry, consider the startup leagues, it's not just the big men's sports, there's a lot of other opportunities. So tech has provided more access. You can consume it on different platforms, Netflix, OTT. The second thing is that the athlete is the entertainer now. And so the power shift has gone from teams and leagues, the fluid fan follows the athlete. So now suddenly everyone wants that interesting entertainer versus just the athlete. So again, women are in a nice position, women's sports, to take advantage of that. And this direct-to-consumer nature. So now when I was playing and I wanted to say something, I had to go through my sponsors or the USOPC or someone was blocking what I wanted unless I could get to an interview and say it on record. The model didn't work. Now athletes are just with NIL, hey, I'm going to build my own brand. So I believe in the future sports will be obviously more digital. It's not going to be analog. The athletes are going to have an enormous amount of power. And just the whole model of sports is shifting in such a way that women's sports poses, I think, to gain the most advantage. No one's really paying attention, by the way. So you have these behemoth men's leagues that can't really shift very quickly. That's classic disruption. So women's sports, I believe, could come in, do things very differently. It's a really interesting space. Think of it as a startup versus an established. Bring more technology, bring more direct to consumer, try things out of the box, quite simply. And they have the athlete that's already doing the TikTok, doing more deals. Women are more authentic on these platforms too, which is what resonates with fans. Not that men aren't, but men have more to lose. They make the majority of their money in professional contracts versus social media and marketing. But women are the inverse. Women are like, yeah, I make a little bit over here. I make all of it doing brand work and being a personality. So I think all these things are saying the future consumer wants this. It's not today, but 5-10 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, whoa, all the ingredients are there. And so that's with NIL. You can kind of see it. You're like, huh, this direct-to-consumer, this entertainer, it's all packaging. Now, those athletes don't have somewhere to go. That's the thing that, okay, you can go to the NWSL or the WNBA, but you're not going to get this. There aren't the same types of opportunities in the professional level. But the point is, I think a lot of what we talked about at this conference is just the dynamic nature of the business of sports. And women's sports has this enormous, I think, opportunity to capitalize it, but they can't lift and shift the men's model. They have to build something fit for purpose that taps into those consumers, which aren't just women. Just build a sexy, cool product that's entertaining, and you're going to do things. You're going to look very different than just selling tickets and sponsorship. You're going to be a media business. So I think that's the way of the world. But women, I think, could do it well, but they could also flop, right? Because people don't want to invest in it. They don't see that on the wall. So that's what we're trying to do: is be like, come on, let's go. Here's the data. The market's there. Go build it. So for anyone that's an entrepreneur, again, there's lots of opportunity out there.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, my name is Ben. I'm an international IS grad student. And from all your guys' stories, it shows that you can work with data in a range of different industries. But did you guys find the job easier or more enjoyable in an industry or field that you're more interested in? Whether it was sports or film, gaming, or even weather?
In my experience, I did end up being in industries that I enjoyed parts of it. It wasn't always the entire part. Again, back in the airlines model, just really appreciated and enjoyed studying the data and sort of the pricing decisions. And I went to the level where 3 times a day we would be changing prices based on the competition or other factors. I think what I've seen myself kind of really observe and get from each industry that I've been, which has been airlines and sports and movies and then live entertainment, is more that it was a job, not just industry, but it ended up being something that resonated with me. I casually like seeing movies, or I casually like going to the movies, games. So I would say it's not always as easy to find the perfect industry than the perfect job. And I had no idea I would end up here when I was in the airline. So certainly doors did open up for me. But one thing I will say, I enjoyed parts of the industry, but it didn't mean that everything was more the job, and then the industry was a nice bonus.
Yeah, I think for me, having worked in different industries, my biggest takeaway, there's 2 takeaways. One, I just like to learn. So I focused more on that part. And, I didn't know anything about advertising or Google even, and learned that. I didn't know too much about the weather business when I got into that. So, there's some opportunistic elements of that, but just it's always been focused around learning and just continuing to get better and being mentally engaged. And then, the success or whatever will come. But the second thing is, I love sports. But I love the business side of sports. I love talking about ticket pricing or hearing different new models or what everybody on this panel is doing, because I like the industry a lot. And, this industry is a very sexy and very interesting industry. That is compelling for a lot of people, but for me, it's just more about the problems we're trying to solve or the innovation we're trying to bring, and thinking about dynamic pricing and whatever else like that. So for me, that's really, really compelling and kind of why I'm in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, I think I kind of said it earlier, but, you know, the skills I have, I could do in a lot of different industries. It's really nice to do it in an industry I care about. It makes, you know, the tougher days a little bit easier, and it makes the good days even better. But on the flip side, like I said earlier, like, I would not want to just do any job in this industry. So I think it is a bonus to work in a field that you care about, that has personal meaning to you. And it's nice that, like, you know, when you tell people what you do, they're interested in it, right? So there's a piece of that as well.
Sorry, one thing I wanted to add is also having switched a couple industries, and I'm sure Jason, everyone else has seen this too, being able to bring something new or something interesting to the next job totally changes your level of confidence and also your level of kind of association with that new job. So I enjoyed being able to do that. At the same time, though, I learned a lot at American Airlines, was able to learn at Cavs, but really more also contribute to the Cavs. And then back in the movies, with our team structure, with really kind of academic approach we took to data, I was back to learning a lot. And Access, it's a kind of great combination of everything. It's also B2B, B2C, right? Thinking of different business models every day, all day. But I enjoyed being in environments where I learned, and then was able to bring it to another. So that definitely changes your approach to that job as well.
If I could just add, build your 10-year plan, know where you want to go, maybe in sports, but don't start in sports would be my advice. Like you did, you go get that skill set from a more mature market that's going to teach you something, and you're going to have that resume builder, and you're going to have outside-in perspective, and then bring it into this industry would be my advice, because trying to work your way up step by step, sometimes you can't. If you're in a league or a team, you're not going to have big teams around you, but if you can like build a skill set outside and bring it in, I personally think if you're starting out, it's the best way to kind of leapfrog into a higher level position within sports. So, but know where you want to go in sports in 10 years, and then go backwards from there. Okay, I need this skill set. Maybe it's not within, go over here and know that it, but I always say like know where you want to head, but you can get there not this way, you can go there this way. Sorry, sports industry, like you'll get us back one day, but we'll be smarter, and then you'll have more of an impact.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit different. I've only worked in sports, but the thing about that would be that don't be afraid to learn something new, even if it doesn't have to do with your direct job. You'll never know what like a new skill that you'll learn that'll help you in 5 years from now, right? So just have an open mind about everything that you want to do as a person, and then just, you know, focus in on that, and then make sure that whatever you do with your job, you know, you're doing it the best of your ability, and then just learn something new. Like I always tell students, like, it doesn't hurt to learn something new. You know, never will hurt to do that. But yeah.
So that concludes our Career Playbooks panel. I hope you are all able to learn a new piece of advice and maybe apply some of their experiences to your own career journey. So if you can give another round of applause to our great panelists.